Jake Sullivan stood at the window of his quarters aboard Unity Station, watching the ships pass by in the distance. The station orbited a neutral star far from any homeworld. It was the place where 47 different alien species met to discuss peace, trade, and politics. Jake was the human ambassador, though most aliens did not take him seriously. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 73 years. It was not a friendly welcome. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the worst kind of planet in the galaxy. Most council members came from garden worlds, places with gentle weather, calm oceans, and few predators. They could not understand how humans survived on Earth. Earth had extreme gravity that crushed weaker species. It had hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanoes. The oceans were filled with creatures that could kill in seconds. Diseases that would wipe out entire alien populations were just common colds to humans. Every generation of humanity had to fight to survive. This made other species nervous. Jake heard a knock on his door. He turned and called for the visitor to enter. Lisa Martinez walked in. She was his second in command, a former soldier who now handled military relations with the council. Her face was serious. "Someone is here to see you," she said. "It is Ambassador Varric from the Vryn Empire." Jake raised his eyebrows. The Vryn were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the council. They looked down on humans, calling them barbarians and primitives. Varric had never visited the human quarters before. "This was unusual. Send him in," Jake said. Varric entered the room. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with emerald scales that shimmered under the lights. His golden eyes usually held pride and confidence. Today they looked hollow. His shoulders sagged. He looked like a man who had lost everything. "Ambassador Sullivan," Varric said quietly. "I come to ask for help." Jake gestured to a chair. Varric sat down heavily. Lisa stood by the door, watching carefully. "What happened?" Jake asked. Varric took a deep breath. "The krill swarm has invaded our space. In 3 months, they have destroyed 14 of our colony worlds. Our military cannot stop them. They adapt to every weapon we use. They learn from every battle. We are losing." Jake had heard rumors about the krill. They were a species that no one understood. Part machine, part living creature. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They only consumed and expanded. Every species feared them. "How long until they reach your home world?" Jake asked. 2 weeks, Varric said. "Maybe less. Thessia Prime has 5 billion people. If we cannot stop the krill, they will all die." "What about the council?" Lisa asked. "What about your allies?" Varric looked down at his hands. "They have abandoned us. They say the krill cannot be defeated. They say helping us would only draw the swarm to their worlds. We asked every member of the council. They all refused." The room was silent for a moment. Jake understood what this meant. The proud Vryn who had always treated humans as inferior were now begging for help. They had nowhere else to turn. "Why come to us?" Jake asked. "You have always said humans were too violent, too dangerous. You voted against our membership in the council." Varric met his eyes. "I did say those things. I was wrong. I see now that violence is not always evil. Sometimes it is necessary. You humans understand war in ways we never wanted to learn. You come from a world that tried to kill you every day. You survived. The krill are like your world. They are a threat that cannot be reasoned with. I hope that your experience can help us." Jake walked to his desk and activated a communication screen. He typed in a code and waited. A face appeared on the screen. It was Admiral Peter Hammond, commander of the human fleet. The admiral was in his 60s with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battles. "Admiral," Jake said, "we have a situation. The Vryn need our help. The krill swarm is about to destroy their homeworld." Hammond did not look surprised. "How long do we have?" he asked. 2 weeks. The admiral nodded. "I will begin mobilization immediately." "How many ships can I bring?" "All of them," Jake said. Hammond allowed himself a small smile. "It will be good to finally show the council what humans can do. I will contact you in 12 hours with deployment plans." The screen went dark. Jake turned back to Varric. The Vryn ambassador looked shocked. "That is it?" Varric asked. "You will help." Just like that. Jake sat down across from him. "Not just like that. We have conditions. First, you will share all information about the krill with us. Every battle, every tactic, every piece of data you have collected. Second, when our fleet arrives, we will have complete command of the defense. Your military will follow our orders. Third, After this is over, if we win, the Council will reconsider how it treats species from harsh worlds. No more discrimination. No more calling us primitives. Varric stood up. He straightened his shoulders and met Jake's eyes. I agree to all of your conditions. I will transmit all data immediately. I will recommend that our military follow your command, and I will personally propose changes to the Council's classification system. He held out his hand. Jake shook it. The grip was firm. Thank you, Varric said softly. You are saving my entire species. We are helping people who need it, Jake replied. That is what we do. After Varric left, Lisa walked over to Jake. She looked concerned. Do you think we can actually win this? She asked. Jake looked out the window again. In the distance, he could see ships beginning to move. The human fleet was assembling. I do not know, he said honestly. The Krill have defeated every species they have encountered, but the Vryn never faced an enemy from Earth. They do not know what we are capable of. Maybe that will make the difference. Lisa nodded. She walked to her own desk and began pulling up files on the Krill. There was so much to learn and so little time. Within hours, the data from the Vryn began arriving. Lisa and her team worked through the night, studying every battle report, every scan, every piece of information. The Krill were terrifying. They moved like a living wave, consuming everything. They adapted to energy weapons in minutes. They reproduced faster than anyone could count. They had no homeworld, no central command that could be targeted. They were everywhere and nowhere. But Lisa noticed something. The Krill were efficient and logical. They always chose the optimal solution. They never wasted resources. They followed patterns. That was their strength, but it might also be their weakness. Humans did not always follow logic. Humans were creative, unpredictable, and sometimes completely insane in battle. Maybe that would be enough. She made notes and prepared a report for Admiral Hammond. The human fleet would need every advantage they could find. This would be the biggest battle humanity had ever fought. The entire galaxy would be watching. If they failed, the Vryn would die. If they succeeded, everything would change. The human fleet began arriving at Unity Station within 12 hours. Ships emerged from jump points, their engines glowing bright blue against the black of space. Admiral Hammond watched from the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, his flagship. It was a massive vessel, 2 kilometers long and armed with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. 73 warships assembled in formation. There were heavy cruisers with thick armor plating. There were destroyers built for speed and firepower. There were frigates designed to hunt smaller targets. And there were 2 massive carriers, each holding 300 fighter craft inside their hangars. The other species on Unity Station stopped what they were doing to watch. They had never seen so many human ships in one place. The vessels looked different from Council designs. Where alien ships were smooth and elegant, human ships were covered in sharp angles and heavy plates. They looked brutal and functional. They looked like they were built for war. Commander Nina Torres arrived with her destroyer, the UNS Thunderhead. She was known throughout the fleet for her aggressive tactics. Some called her reckless. Others called her brilliant. Hammond called her effective. He sent her a simple message: prepare for extended combat operations. Jake and Lisa boarded a shuttle to the Vanguard. They needed to meet with Hammond and plan the defense. The shuttle docked in the main hangar. Marines saluted as they walked through the corridors. Everyone moved with purpose. There was no panic, only focused preparation. Hammond met them in the strategy room. The walls were covered with screens showing maps, ship positions, and data about the Krill. Several other officers were already present. Kyle Roberts, a tactical specialist, stood by the main display. Captain Rachel Price, who commanded one of the heavy cruisers, sat reviewing reports. Hammond did not waste time with greetings. He pointed at the largest screen. Lisa, tell us what you have learned about the enemy. Lisa activated a holographic display. Images of the Krill appeared in the air. They looked like nightmares. Some were the size of fighter craft, covered in sharp edges and glowing with strange light. Others were massive, as big as capital ships, with hundreds of weapons growing from their bodies. The Krill are part biological, part mechanical, Lisa explained. They share information through quantum connections across their entire swarm. When one unit learns something, they all learn it. The Vryn used energy weapons against them. The Krill adapted within minutes. Now those weapons are almost useless. Kyle Roberts stepped forward. He was a young man with sharp eyes who had studied every major battle in human history. That is their strength, he said. But it is also a weakness. They adapt to what they face, but adaptation takes time. If we hit them with something they have never seen, we have a window. We need to make that window as wide as possible. Hammond nodded. What do you suggest? We use kinetic weapons first, Kyle said. Railguns firing solid projectiles at high speed. The Krill have focused on energy defenses. Physical impacts will surprise them. We load missiles with different payloads. Explosives, chemicals, biological agents. We make every attack different so they cannot predict the next one. Captain Price spoke up. She was older than most officers, with gray in her hair and scars on her hands from years of service. What about their numbers? The reports say there are millions of them. We can kill thousands and they will barely notice. That is where tactics come in. Hammond said, we do not fight them head-on like the Vryn did. We use hit-and-run attacks. We divide their attention. We make them react to us instead of following their plan. Most importantly, we keep changing our approach. Humans are good at chaos. The Krill are good at order. We use that against them. Lisa brought up another screen. It showed the path from Unity Station to Thessia Prime, the Vryn homeworld. It would take 4 days to reach it using the Council jump gates. The Krill would arrive in about 2 weeks. That gave them 10 days to prepare defenses. Jake had been listening quietly. Now he asked a question. What if we lose? What if the Krill are too strong even for us? Hammond looked at him directly. Then we make sure we take as many of them with us as possible, and we make sure the Vryn civilians have time to evacuate. But I do not plan to lose. Humans have faced extinction before. Every time we found a way to survive, this will not be different. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed weapons, tactics, supply lines, and contingency plans. Every officer contributed ideas. Hammond listened to all of them, taking the best suggestions and combining them into a coherent strategy. Finally, he stood up. The fleet will jump to Thessia Prime in 8 hours. Make sure every ship is ready. Check all systems. Load all weapons. This is going to be the hardest fight any of us have ever been in. I expect everyone to do their duty. The officers saluted and left to return to their ships. Jake and Lisa remained behind with Hammond. Do you really think we can win? Jake asked again. Hammond walked to the window. Outside, the fleet was still assembling. Ships moved into position with military precision. Yes, he said. Because we have something the Krill do not have. We know what it means to fight for survival. Every human alive today is descended from people who refuse to die. That is in our blood. The Krill are about to learn what a species from Earth can do when they are pushed. 8 hours later, the fleet prepared to jump. Jake stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching with Varric beside him. The Vryn ambassador had not left since the humans arrived. He wanted to see them depart. Your people are different, Varric said quietly. Your ships, your weapons, even the way your officers speak. Everything is harder, more direct. I understand now why the Council feared you. We are not here to be feared, Jake replied. We are here to help. Varric nodded. I know. That is what makes you remarkable. You could have refused us. We treated you poorly for decades. But you came anyway. If we survive this, the Vryn will remember. The galaxy will remember. The fleet began to move. One by one, the ships activated their jump drives. Space seemed to bend and twist around them. Then they were gone, vanishing into the streams of energy that connected the stars. The journey took 4 days. The fleet moved in formation, maintaining communication silence to avoid alerting the Krill. Aboard the Vanguard, Hammond spent the time reviewing every detail of the plan. Lisa continued analyzing Krill tactics. Kyle ran simulations of different battle scenarios. On the 4th day, they emerged at the edge of the Thessia system. What they saw confirmed all their fears. The Krill swarm filled space like a living cloud. Sensors counted millions of individual units. They moved in perfect coordination, advancing slowly toward the inner planets. Some were tiny, no bigger than a person. Others were enormous, kilometers long and bristling with weapons. Near Thessia Prime, the remnants of the Vryn fleet held a defensive position. Only 12 cruisers and 38 smaller ships remained. They looked battered and damaged. Their commander, Admiral Cynthia, immediately contacted Hammond. Her face appeared on the screen. She was a Vryn female with dark blue scales and tired eyes. We have been fighting for 6 days, she said. We lose more ships every time they attack. I never thought anyone would come to help us. Hammond's response was brief. Fall back to orbit around your homeworld. We will handle the vanguard of the swarm. Prepare your ships for defensive operations only. Cynthia hesitated. You are going to attack them directly? There are millions of them. That is correct, Hammond said. Watch and learn how humans fight. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. All ships, battle formation. Prepare to engage the enemy. Today we show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. The human fleet moved forward in a formation that confused the Vryn observers. Instead of staying close together for protection, the ships spread out in loose groups. There were gaps between them that looked like weaknesses. Admiral Kynthia watched from her flagship and wondered if the humans understood what they were facing. The Krill swarm detected the new arrivals. Millions of units shifted direction, moving toward the human ships. They came in waves, perfect and coordinated. It was like watching a storm approach. Commander Torres stood on the bridge of the Thunderhead. Her crew was ready at their stations. She watched the enemy approach on her screens. They were close now, close enough to attack. She opened a channel to all ships in her group. Remember the plan, she said. Hit them hard, hit them fast, then pull back. Make every shot count. Fire when ready. The Thunderhead's railguns fired first. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, launched from the ship at incredible speed. They were moving so fast that they glowed white-hot. The projectiles crossed the distance to the Krill in seconds. The impacts were devastating. The solid rounds punched straight through the Krill's shields like they were not there. Explosions bloomed across the swarm as units were torn apart. Dozens died with each shot. Then hundreds more as the other human ships opened fire. The Krill had never faced weapons like this. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams and plasma. Physical objects moving at a fraction of light speed were something new. Chaos spread through their formation as thousands of units were destroyed in the first minutes. But the Krill learned quickly. That was their nature. Within 5 minutes, their tactics changed. They began using their own destroyed units as shields. They spread out their formations to reduce the effectiveness of each shot. Their point defense systems recalibrated to track solid projectiles. Hammond watched the battle from the vanguard. He saw the Krill adapting. Good, he thought. That is exactly what we expected. He opened a channel to the missile cruisers. Second wave, launch everything. The missile cruisers opened their tubes. Thousands of warheads erupted from their hulls, filling space with trails of fire. These were not precision weapons. They were designed to cover large areas with destruction. The missiles flew on erratic paths, changing direction randomly to avoid interception. When they reached the Krill formation, they detonated in cascading waves. Some carried high explosives that created massive fireballs. Others released clouds of corrosive chemicals. Some scattered thousands of smaller bomblets that exploded in chain reactions. The Krill swarm was caught in a storm of fire and metal. Their perfect coordination broke down as units were vaporized or damaged beyond function. The hive mind tried to adapt, but every missile was different. There was no pattern to learn from, only chaos. Captain Rachel Price commanded the heavy cruiser UNS Defiant. She watched the missiles do their work, then ordered her ship forward. Time to get up close, she said. The Defiant pushed into the confused Krill formation. Her main guns fired plasma torpedoes, superheated matter that burned through armor instead of being deflected by shields. Her secondary batteries added railgun fire. She became a moving fortress of destruction, carving a path through the enemy. The other human ships followed her lead. They advanced through the gaps in their formation, using them as rally points. Every captain fought with aggression, pushing forward instead of holding back. This was the human way of war. Not elegant, not efficient, but absolutely relentless. Alex Chen led his fighter squadron from the carrier Intrepid. 200 craft launched together, tiny compared to the capital ships but fast and deadly. They dove into the Krill swarm like hawks hunting prey. Chen's fighters carried mixed payloads. Some had missiles. Others had bombs. A few carried experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat. He did not care about perfect tactics. He cared about killing as many Krill as possible. Break by wings, he ordered. Hit targets of opportunity. Do not stay still. Keep them guessing. The fighters scattered in all directions. They attacked from above, below, and from the sides. They used the wreckage of destroyed Krill units as cover. They fired, moved, and fired again. The Krill tried to respond, but the fighters were too fast and too unpredictable. Back on Unity Station, Lisa monitored the battle through long-range sensors. She was taking notes on everything. The Krill's response times, their adaptation patterns, where they were strong and where they were weak. Jake stood beside her watching the displays. Can we actually win this, he asked. This first engagement, yes, Lisa said. We surprised them. They were not ready for kinetic weapons or for our tactics. But they are learning. Look here. She pointed at a section of the display. They are already coordinating better against the fighters. In another hour, they will have adapted to our missiles too. Then what happens, Jake asked. Then we change tactics again, Lisa said. That is the key. We never let them settle into a pattern. We keep them off balance. As long as we can keep adapting faster than they can, we have a chance. The battle continued for 2 more hours. The human fleet destroyed millions of krill units. The vanguard of the swarm was broken and scattered. But the victory came with a cost. 3 human frigates were destroyed. 42 fighters did not return to their carriers. Dozens of ships reported damage. Hammond ordered the fleet to pull back to Thessia Prime. They needed time to rearm and repair. The krill would need time to regroup as well. It was a temporary pause in a battle that was far from over. Admiral Cynthia contacted Hammond again. Her expression was one of amazement. I have never seen anything like that, she said. You destroyed more krill in 2 hours than we destroyed in 3 months. How is that possible? Hammond's answer was simple. We are from Earth. We grew up fighting every day just to survive. This is what we were made for. Cynthia was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again. The council was wrong about your people. They said you were too violent, too dangerous, but violence is not evil when it protects the innocent. Thank you for coming to help us, Hammond nodded. Save your thanks. This was only the first battle. The main body of the swarm is still out there. They know about us now. They will be ready next time. Get your ships repaired. We are going to need every vessel we have. Across the human fleet, crews worked frantically to prepare for the next engagement. Engineers repaired damaged systems. Weapons officers reloaded empty magazines. Medical teams treated the wounded. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. Torres walked through the corridors of the Thunderhead, checking on her crew. She found them tired but determined. They had tasted victory. Now they wanted more. Alex Chen sat in his fighter, running diagnostics. His craft had taken hits during the battle. Nothing critical, but enough to be worrying. He made a note to have the mechanics look at it. He would need his fighter in perfect condition for what was coming. On Thessia Prime, 5 billion Vryn civilians watched the sky. They had seen the explosions, the flashes of light from the battle in space. They did not know who was winning. They only knew that someone was fighting for them. That gave them hope. Hammond stood alone in his quarters looking at casualty reports. Every name represented a life lost, people who had families, who had dreams, who had futures. He felt the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. But he did not regret the decision to fight. Some things were worth dying for. Protecting innocent lives was one of them. He closed the reports and returned to the bridge. There was work to do. The krill would attack again soon, and when they did, humanity would be ready. 72 hours passed. The human fleet used every moment to prepare. Ships moved in and out of repair docks. Ammunition was transferred from supply vessels. Crews rested in shifts, grabbing sleep when they could. Everyone knew the next battle would be harder. The krill swarm had pulled back to regroup, but long-range sensors showed them advancing again. This time their formation was different. They had learned from the first battle. They spread out more, making it harder to hit multiple units with single attacks. They deployed smaller drones and screens ahead of their main force. Lisa studied the new approach from Unity Station. She sent her analysis to Hammond. The krill are adapting faster than we hoped. They have countermeasures ready for our kinetic weapons. We need to move to Phase 2. Hammond read her message and made his decision. Phase 2 meant using weapons that made even him uncomfortable. Chemical weapons, biological agents, things that humanity had created during its darkest wars, things that the Council had banned centuries ago. He called a meeting of his senior officers. When they gathered in the strategy room, his expression was grave. The krill are ready for conventional weapons, he said. We are going to use unconventional ones. I am authorizing the deployment of restricted ordnance. Everyone understand what that means. We are crossing lines that the Council drew. There will be consequences after this is over. Captain Price spoke up. Are we sure about this? Those weapons were banned for good reasons. Hammond nodded. Yes, they were. But there are 5 billion civilians on that planet who will die if we fail. I will take responsibility for this decision. If anyone objects, speak now. No one objected. They all understood the stakes. The second battle began at dawn, Thessia time. The Krill swarm approached in a massive wave, millions of units moving with perfect coordination. The human fleet met them at the outer edge of the system. This time, the railguns were less effective. The Krill's point defense systems tracked and destroyed many of the projectiles before impact. The ones that got through still did damage, but not like before. The enemy had adapted. Torres watched her weapons officer struggle to get shots through the Krill defenses. She opened a channel to Hammond. "They are ready for us," she reported. "Kinetic weapons are only 50% effective. Switch to Phase 2 ordnance," Hammond ordered. "All ships deploy special weapons." Specialized missile pods opened on dozens of human ships. The warheads they launched looked no different from standard missiles. But their payloads were anything but standard. Some carried nanotech disassemblers, microscopic machines that broke down matter at the molecular level. Others held viral agents engineered to attack both biological and mechanical systems. Still others released chemical compounds that burned through almost any material. The missiles reached the Krill formation and detonated. The effects were immediate and horrifying. Entire sections of the swarm began to dissolve. The disassemblers spread like a plague, each one reproducing and consuming more Krill units. The viral agents infected thousands of organisms, corrupting their systems and making them attack each other. The chemicals created walls of fire that consumed everything they touched. Back on Unity Station, Varric watched the battle through sensors. His scales had gone pale. "What are they doing?" he asked Jake. "What they have to," Jake replied quietly. "You asked for help. This is what human help looks like when we are fighting for survival." The Krill swarm reeled under the assault. Millions of units died in minutes. But even as they died, the hive mind was learning. It began isolating infected units, cutting off their connections before the corruption could spread. It developed countermeasures to the chemical weapons, altering the molecular structure of Krill armor. Within an hour, the special weapons were becoming less effective. The Krill were adapting again. Then the Krill launched their counterattack. Millions of medium-sized units broke from the main formation and accelerated toward the human fleet. They were suicide drones, each carrying enough explosive material to cripple a capital ship. Defensive fire erupted from every human vessel. Point defense lasers and rapid-fire guns tried to stop the wave of attackers. They destroyed thousands, but thousands more kept coming. The carrier Relentless took multiple hits. Explosions tore through her hull. Secondary detonations ripped apart her hangar bays. Captain Nicole Grant ordered evacuation as her ship began to break apart. Torres saw the Relentless dying. She made a split-second decision. Thunderhead, full power to engines. Get us between that carrier and the next wave. Her crew obeyed without question. The destroyer surged forward, positioning itself as a shield. Torres ordered continuous fire from all weapons. The railguns overheated from sustained firing. The barrels glowed red, then white, but they kept shooting. Hundreds of Krill suicide drones died before reaching the Thunderhead. But dozens got through. They impacted against the destroyer's armor. Torres felt her ship shudder with each hit. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. But the Relentless had time to evacuate most of her crew. Shuttles and escape pods launched in all directions. Other ships moved in to recover survivors. The battle became desperate. Human ships traded fire with the Krill at close range. Some vessels rammed enemy units when they ran out of ammunition. Fighter pilots flew suicide runs to take out high-value targets. Every human in the fleet fought with the ferocity of people who knew they were protecting innocent lives, but the numbers were against them. For every Krill unit destroyed, more arrived. The swarm seemed endless. Hammond watched his fleet take cumulative damage. Ships limped back toward Thessia Prime for emergency repairs. Casualty reports grew longer. Lisa transmitted an urgent message. "Admiral, I have run the projections. At current attrition rates, the fleet will be combat ineffective in 5 days. The Krill will reach Thessia Prime shortly after that." Hammond gathered his officers again. They looked exhausted. Some had bandages from injuries sustained when their ships were hit. "We are not winning," he said bluntly. "We are hurting them, but not enough. I need options." Kyle Roberts stepped forward. He had been working on an idea. The Krill's strength is their hive mind. They share information instantly across their entire swarm. But what if we disrupt that connection? "How?" Hammond asked. "We use every nuclear weapon we have. All of them at once." The electromagnetic pulse from simultaneous detonations should create a massive interference field. It might sever the quantum connections that link the Krill units. Captain Price looked concerned. That will affect our ships too. We will be blind and defenseless during the pulse. Kyle nodded. Yes. But if it works, the Krill will be in chaos. We will have a window to attack while they are disorganized. It might be our only chance. Hammond considered the plan. It was risky. It would use their entire nuclear arsenal in one strike. If it failed, they would have nothing left. But if they did nothing, they would lose anyway. Do it, he ordered. All ships prepare to launch nuclear weapons on my command. Target the densest concentration of Krill forces. Simultaneous detonation. The fleet pulled back to minimum safe distance. Every ship armed its nuclear missiles. Over 3,000 warheads were ready to launch. Crews activated radiation shielding and prepared for the electromagnetic interference. Hammond gave the order. Fire. 3,000 nuclear weapons launched simultaneously. They converged on a single point in the Krill formation. Then they detonated all at once. For several seconds, a miniature star existed in space. The light was so bright that people on Thessia Prime could see it even during the day. The electromagnetic pulse washed across millions of kilometers, scrambling every electronic system it touched. When the sensors came back online, the result was clear. The Krill swarm was in complete chaos. Units drifted without direction. Some fired on each other. Others simply shut down. The hive mind connection was severed. Hammond saw his opportunity. All ships attack now. Maximum aggression. Do not let them recover. The human fleet surged forward into the confused swarm. This was humanity's element. Close combat. Brutal and direct. They would show the Krill what Deathworlders could really do. The human fleet crashed into the disorganized Krill swarm like a hammer. Without their hive mind connection, the Krill units fought as individuals. They had no coordination, no shared intelligence. They were vulnerable. Torres pushed the Thunderhead deep into enemy formation. Her ship was damaged and her weapons were running low on ammunition, but she kept fighting. Every shot counted. Every Krill unit destroyed was one less threat to Thessia Prime. Captain Price's cruiser Defiant moved alongside the Thunderhead. Together they carved a path through the confused swarm. Their combined firepower was devastating. Krill units exploded by the hundreds. Alex Chen led his remaining fighters in surgical strikes. Lisa had identified larger Krill organisms that seemed to be trying to restore coordination. These were command nodes attempting to rebuild the hive network. Chen's pilots targeted them specifically. The fighters dove through clouds of debris and fire. They dodged wild shots from confused Krill units. Chen locked onto a massive bioship that was pulsing with strange energy. That one he called to his wing. Concentrate all fire. 20 fighters unleashed their remaining weapons at the command node. Missiles and plasma bolts converged on the target. The bioship tried to defend itself, but could not coordinate its point defense properly. It exploded in a brilliant flash. Torres spotted another command node attempting to restore order to a section of the swarm. Her Thunderhead was critically damaged. Most of her weapons were offline. Her engines were failing, but she could still move. All crew to escape pods, she ordered. Engineering set the reactor to overload on my command. Her crew hesitated. Captain, we can still fight from here. That is an order, Torres said firmly. Evacuate now. The crew obeyed. Escape pods began launching from the Thunderhead. Torres stayed on the bridge alone. She aimed her ship at the Krill command node and engaged the engines at maximum power. The destroyer accelerated, picking up speed. Hammond watched from the vanguard. He knew what Torres was doing. He opened a channel. Commander Torres, you have done enough. Get to an escape pod, Torres smiled. Someone has to make sure this thing hits the target, Admiral. It has been an honor serving with you. The Thunderhead impacted the command node at full velocity. The fusion reactor detonated on contact. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. The command node and thousands of surrounding Krill units were vaporized instantly. The blast wave disrupted any attempt to restore the hive network in that sector. The battle continued for hours. The human fleet was relentless. Every ship, every fighter, every crew member gave everything they had. They fought with a desperation born from protecting innocent lives. Slowly, the Krill swarm began to break. Without coordination, they could not mount effective attacks. Without the hive mind, they could not adapt to new threats. The humans exploited every weakness, never giving the enemy time to recover. After 6 days of continuous combat, the Krill began to retreat. The remaining units pulled back beyond the Thesia system. Long-range sensors tracked them, withdrawing into deep space. The hive mind had apparently decided that the cost of continuing was too high. Hammond ordered the fleet to stand down. They had won. Thesia Prime was safe. The human fleet limped into orbit around the Vryn homeworld. 11 ships had been lost with all hands. 23 more were damaged beyond field repair. Thousands of crew members were dead or wounded, but 5 billion Vryn civilians were alive. On the surface of Thesia Prime, people looked up at the sky. They could see the human ships, battered and scarred but still flying. Celebrations broke out in every city. The Vryn had been saved. Admiral Kynthia contacted Hammond. Her voice was filled with emotion. "You did it? You actually did it." "I did not believe it was possible." Hammond was exhausted. "We had help from your fleet. Your people fought bravely alongside us." Kynthia shook her head. "No, you saved us. We could not have stopped the Krill alone." The Vryn people owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species in the Council heard about it. Humanity, the species that everyone dismissed as primitive barbarians, had defeated an enemy that terrified the entire galaxy. Jake stood before the Galactic Council. Varric had requested a special session. Representatives from all 47 member species were present. The chamber was silent as Varric began to speak. 3 months ago, the Krill swarm invaded Vryn space, Varric said. In weeks, they destroyed our colonies and advanced on our home world. We asked this council for help. Every member refused. They said the Krill could not be defeated. They said helping us would only lead to more deaths. He paused and looked around the chamber. Then humanity answered our call. They traveled across the galaxy to fight an enemy they had never seen before. They used weapons and tactics we did not understand. They lost thousands of their people protecting ours. And they won. Varric gestured to Jake. This council has treated Deathworld species as inferior for centuries. We called them dangerous. We called them primitive. We were wrong. Humanity has proven that species from harsh worlds are not weak. They are strong in ways we never imagined. They understand survival in ways we never had to learn. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Varric continued. I propose that we revise our classification system. Deathworld species should no longer be treated as second-class members. They have earned our respect. Humanity should receive permanent seats on the Military Defense Committee. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed. Several other changes followed. Species from harsh environments that had been marginalized for years suddenly received recognition. New opportunities opened for them. The political structure of the council began to shift, but there were conditions too. The council demanded that humanity declare its arsenal of forbidden weapons. They wanted oversight. They wanted humanity's tactical knowledge shared with council militaries. Jake agreed. Trust had to be built through transparency. Later, Jake stood with Lisa on the observation deck of Unity Station. They watched the human fleet prepare for the journey home. Most of the damaged ships would need months of repair work. Was it worth it? Jake asked quietly. All those lives lost, Lisa thought about the question. Yes, she said finally. We saved 5 billion people. We proved that humans are not just warriors, but protectors. And we changed the entire political structure of the galaxy. That is worth the cost. Jake nodded. He hoped she was right. Admiral Hammond received commendations from 17 different species. He accepted them with his usual serious manner. When reporters asked how humanity developed such effective strategies, his answer became famous across the galaxy. We learned by surviving, he said simply. Every human carries the legacy of a planet that tried to kill them. We fought predators, diseases, disasters, and each other for millions of years. The Krill were terrifying, but they were not Earth. Commander Torres survived the destruction of her ship. Rescue teams found her escape pod drifting in space. She was brought back to the fleet with injuries but alive. The council gave her their highest military honor. She was the first human to receive it. At the ceremony, she gave a short speech. We did what humans always do, she said. We found a way. No matter how bad things get, we always find a way to survive. That is what it means to be from Earth. The story spread across human colonies. Children learned about the Battle of Thesia Prime in schools. Veterans who had fought there were treated as heroes. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy changed forever, but there were shadows too. Long-range probes detected movement in deep space. The Krill were regrouping. Lisa's analysis suggested they had learned from their defeat. The next encounter would be harder. 6 months after the battle, the human fleet was rebuilt. New ships joined the force. New technologies combining human innovation with council advancements were deployed. Training programs began, teaching other species human tactics. The Vryn and humans formed a formal alliance. Cultural exchanges began. Vryn civilians visited Earth, amazed that anyone could survive such a harsh planet. Human colonists established outposts in Vryn space. Hammond stood on the bridge of a new flagship, watching tactical displays. Human ships were now integrated throughout the Council defense network. They were no longer outsiders. They were guardians. A young officer approached him. "Sir, do you think the Krill will come back?" Hammond looked at the displays showing the entire galaxy. "Yes," he said. "They will come back. But when they do, they will not face just humanity. They will face a galaxy that has learned what we already knew, that survival is not given. It is earned. And nothing earned through struggle is ever surrendered without a fight." 1 year after the Battle of Thessia Prime, the galaxy had changed. Human ships patrolled alongside vessels from dozens of other species. The old barriers between Deathworld and Garden World species were breaking down, but new challenges emerged. Jake sat in his office on Unity Station reviewing reports. The Krill had been quiet for months, but that silence worried him more than open conflict. Lisa's intelligence teams tracked movement in deep space. The swarm was out there watching and learning. A message arrived from Earth. The government wanted him to return for a ceremony. They were dedicating a memorial to those who died in the battle. 3,000 names would be carved in stone, a permanent reminder of the price of victory. Jake decided to go. He needed to see home again. He needed to remember why they fought. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake traveled with Lisa and several other officers who had served during the battle. When their ship entered orbit, he looked down at the blue and white globe below. From space, Earth looked beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to imagine it was classified as one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. They landed in Washington, where the memorial was being built. The ceremony was scheduled for the next day. Jake spent the evening walking through the city, thinking about everything that had happened. He met Admiral Hammond at a quiet restaurant. The Admiral had retired from active command but still served as an advisor. They sat by a window overlooking the Potomac River. "How are you handling retirement?" Jake asked. Hammond smiled slightly. "Poorly. I keep wanting to return to the fleet, but they need younger commanders now, people who can adapt to the new reality of Council cooperation." "Do you think we will fight the Krill again?" Jake asked. "Yes," Hammond said without hesitation. "They are still out there. They are studying what we did. Next time they will be ready for our tactics. We need to stay ahead of them." The next morning, thousands gathered for the memorial dedication. Families of the fallen stood in front. Behind them were veterans, government officials, and representatives from other species. Varric was there along with Admiral Kinthia and several other Vryn. Jake gave a speech. He talked about courage and sacrifice. He spoke about the crew members who gave their lives protecting people they had never met. He reminded everyone that freedom and safety always came with a price. When he finished, there was silence. Then music played, a traditional military piece that honored the dead. People wept. Families touched the names carved in stone. It was a moment of shared grief and pride. After the ceremony, Varric approached Jake. The Vryn ambassador looked older than he had a year ago. The weight of what his people had endured showed in his eyes. "I come here to honor those who saved my world," Varric said. "These names represent more than just human lives. They represent the best of what any species can be: courage, compassion, sacrifice." Jake nodded. "They did what was right. That is all." Varric placed a hand on his shoulder. "No. They did what was extraordinary, and the galaxy is better for it." That evening, Jake met with Commander Torres. She had fully recovered from her injuries and was training new pilots. They sat on a park bench watching the sun set over the city. "Do you ever regret what you did?" Jake asked. "Sacrificing your ship." Torres shook her head. "No, I knew what I was doing. That command node needed to be destroyed. If my death could save others, it was worth it. I just got lucky and survived." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Torres spoke again. "The new pilots are good. better than we were at their age. They learned from our mistakes. When the Krill come back, they will be ready. A week later, Jake returned to Unity Station. Work continued as always. The Council was planning new defense networks. Human engineers were sharing their weapons technology. Joint training exercises happened every month, but there were tensions too. Some species resented humanity's new influence. They complained that humans were too aggressive, too willing to use force. Others worried that human weapons were too dangerous, that giving them to other species would lead to new wars. Jake spent much of his time managing these concerns. He reminded critics that humanity had saved the Vryn when no one else would help. He argued that sometimes peace required the willingness to fight. Lisa worked on a different challenge. She led a team studying the Krill, trying to predict their next move. The data suggested they were rebuilding in deep space beyond the reach of Council sensors. When they returned, they would be stronger and smarter. One night, Lisa found Jake working late in his office. She brought 2 cups of coffee and sat across from him. "You need to rest," she said. "You cannot solve every problem yourself." Jake smiled tiredly. "I keep thinking about what comes next. We won one battle, but the war is not over. The Krill are still out there, and we barely survived the last encounter." Lisa nodded. "That is true. But we are not alone anymore. We have allies now. The Vryn will fight beside us. Other species are learning our tactics. The next battle will be different." Jake hoped she was right. But doubt lingered. The Krill had seemed unstoppable. Humanity won through surprise and desperation. Next time, those advantages would be gone. 3 months later, the warnings came. Deep space probes detected Krill movement. The swarm was advancing again, heading toward Council space. This time they were approaching from multiple directions, having learned not to concentrate their forces. The Council called an emergency session. Jake stood before the assembled representatives with Hammond and Lisa beside him. "The Krill are coming," Jake said simply. "We estimate they will reach Council territory in 2 months. This time, they are prepared for our tactics. This time the fight will be harder." A representative from a peaceful garden world species spoke up. "Perhaps we should negotiate. Perhaps we can avoid war." Hammond stepped forward. "The Krill do not negotiate. They consume. They expand. They have never communicated with any species. If we do not fight, we die. It is that simple." Another representative asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we win again?" Jake took a breath before answering. "I do not know, but I know we will try. Humanity did not survive millions of years on Earth by giving up. We will fight with everything we have. And we hope you will fight beside us." The vote was unanimous. Every Council species agreed to support the defense. Ships from 47 different civilizations began assembling. It would be the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Preparations intensified. New weapons were deployed. Defense networks were strengthened. Evacuation plans were created for worlds that might be attacked. Everyone worked together, united by the common threat. Jake stood at the window of his quarters one evening, looking out at the assembled fleet. Thousands of ships floated in formation, representing the combined strength of galactic civilization. It was an impressive sight, but he knew the Krill were impressive too. They had numbers that seemed endless. They adapted to every threat. They never stopped, never negotiated, never surrendered. Lisa joined him at the window. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That we are about to find out if humanity's reputation is deserved," Jake said. "We showed the galaxy we could win one battle. Now we need to prove we can win a war." Lisa looked at the fleet. "We will win because we have something the Krill do not have. We fight for each other. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That gives us strength they can never understand." Jake nodded. He hoped she was right. In 2 months they would know for certain. The Krill were coming. The galaxy would stand together or fall divided. But one thing was certain. Humanity would not run. They would not hide. They were from Earth, the death world that made them strong. They had survived worse threats than the Krill. They would survive this too. Or they would die trying. That was the human way.